Hello everybody, I am a HUD certified housing and financial counselor with Catholic Charities of Central and Northern Missouri. And today we will be talking about how to protect yourself financially from the impacts of the coronavirus. As we know, communities all over the world are taking action to prevent the spread of this virus, but unfortunately that has left us with some negative economic impacts. So, how might COVID affect me financially? Many of us will see a decrease in income during this time, whether this has led to unemployment, or maybe your place of business is still open, but you have less hours, or you're not receiving as many tips from people coming in. Or perhaps if you do get sick and your employer does not provide paid sick leave, you might also see a decrease in income from that, as well as if you are a business owner and you are suffering revenue loss for your business itself. Also, some of us may see some increase in expenses. There may be some healthcare costs involved, as well as just extra expenses from stocking up on food and supplies that many of us have felt the need to do at this time. So, what can we do to address this issue? First of all, we want to take responsibility now to protect yourself financially, and we'll talk about some tips and strategies for you to do that. Additionally, it would be great to educate yourself on government benefits that are becoming available to assist you during this time. And lastly, just to ask for help when you need it. This is something the whole world is facing right now, and we're all learning how to navigate it. So don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. So here are some tips for how to stretch your dollar during this time when you might face a little bit more financial stress. First of all, it's important to focus your spending on your needs rather than your wants. So this includes things like your shelter, your utilities, your food, and your transportation, and any other basic things you and your family need to survive, such as medication. And it's important to remember that this is temporary. It's not fun to not be able to spend your money on what you want, but this isn't a permanent thing. This is just for right now while we're in this crisis. Second, it's a good idea to use a spending plan or a budget to plan and track your income and expenses for the month to make sure that all of your needs are met. Additionally, we should all avoid panic shopping and making decisions out of fear. A lot of times our emotions in these situations can drive our behaviors, so we just want to be cognizant of what we're spending our money on and why. So buy only what you need and what you will actually use. And lastly, a lot of us are stuck at home right now, so we might be facing some boredom, and online shopping can be a lot of fun. But this is really not the time that we want to be doing that if we're facing financial stress. So there's plenty of fun, free things you can do at home. So get creative and find some fun things to do at home. So while those are all good tips, a lot of us are still going to face some financial stress, even if we're just focusing on our needs. Some of us might not have any income at all right now. So first of all, we'll need to get creative to increase our income during this time. So try to think about a temporary or part-time job you might be able to find in the meantime. This might be finding places of business that actually need more help right now, like a grocery store or deliveries or things like that. Or it might be a side hustle, something that you can make and sell to other people, or even something you can do for your neighbors, like cleaning their house or mowing their lawn, anything that you can do to supplement that income during this time. Additionally, you can think about any assets you have that you might be able to sell if you really need to supplement your income to pay for your needs right now. Next, if you are concerned about your ability to pay a bill, it's really important that you reach out to that servicer or lender and let them know about your situation. A lot of times when we face a crisis like this and we can't pay a bill, a lot of us want to hide or ignore the problem, and the last thing we want to do is reach out to the person we owe the money to. But communication is really key in these situations. A lot of these companies have options in place to help you when you struggle to pay your bill, and especially at this time as many people are affected by this crisis, many companies are going to be willing to work with you. For example, many utility companies have stated that they will not suspend your services at this time if you cannot pay your bill, because they want you to still have access to your water and your electricity and your internet and your phone and things like that, because this is a hard time for everyone. So the first thing you do if you're worried about not being able to pay that bill is just reach out and see what options they might be able to offer you. And lastly, if possible, begin to save or continue to save if you already were, to prepare for emergencies, future unemployment, or an ongoing crisis. Because even if you feel okay now and you're able to provide for your needs right now, we're not sure how long this will last or if you'll have any other needs in the future. So it's a good idea to prepare for that now. Next, these are some tips for avoiding any financial pitfalls during this time. The last thing we want anyone to see is a short-term crisis putting them into long-term trouble. So it's a really good idea to avoid taking on debt or cashing out investments or doing anything that might put you in long-term financial stress. We want to keep this in a short-term time period. So if at all possible, continue to make those minimum payments on your credit cards and your debt and your loans so that you won't have damages to your credit. Of course, we want to prioritize current needs first. So it's important to provide for your shelter and food, etc., before making loan payments or credit card payments. But if possible, it's a good idea to keep those going, because anything negative on your credit report may stay on there for 7 to 10 years. Next, be aware of potential scam attempts. Unfortunately, there are scammers who take advantage of opportunities like this when people are already in need or in a crisis, and they attempt to take your money or your identity or other things during this time. So educate yourself on how to know whether something is trustworthy or not, and be careful when you're making decisions, especially in regards to your finances. And lastly, many stores and companies are going to be offering sales right now because their business is hurting too. So while it may be very tempting to get a really good deal, it's good to remember that when you feel like you're saving money from a sale, you're actually still spending money. So if you're financially tight on your finances right now, just focus on your needs, save your extra for emergencies, and you can go back to spending on those wants at a later time. Next, we're going to talk about a few government benefits and other resources that are being talked about or are already available to help you if you are struggling financially during this time. So it's important that you stay up to date on what's becoming available, especially from the federal government. Some things that they've talked about are paid sick leave and family leave, expanded unemployment benefits, small business loans, as well as even stimulus checks sent directly to individuals. So keep an eye out for news on those things coming. In the meantime, explore existing benefits that we already have available to us through local governments and service providers. At this link here, you can learn about the unemployment benefits in Missouri and see if you're eligible for those. As well as some companies have agreed to not suspend services if you can't pay your bills, and things like that. So check with your providers and see if they're doing anything to help during this time. As well as many schools and restaurants are providing free lunches for kids who are home from the public schools being closed. So just check out those resources in your local community. So these are a few measures that have already been put in place to assist you during this time. The first is the HUD foreclosure and eviction moratorium. This guidance applies only to FHA loans, so that's something important to understand. If you have a conventional mortgage or something else, this does not apply to you. But for anyone with an FHA mortgage, for the next 60 days, they will halt all foreclosures as well as evictions for renters who rent from owners with FHA loans on their homes. So if you don't have an FHA loan, you could still reach out to your lender, and they may also be willing to work with you during this time as well. Next is the action taken on student loans. So these measures only apply to student loans held by federal government agencies, such as the Department of Education. So if you have any private student loans, this does not apply to those, but again, you can reach out to those lenders and see if they have any options to help during this time. So the first measure is that interest on those federal student loans has temporarily been frozen. So what this will do is reduce the amount you owe over the lifetime of the loan, as the interest is not currently accruing. And we do not know yet how long it will be frozen. So it's important to note that this does not reduce your current payments or eliminate any existing debt that you have. And next, they have announced the ability to suspend your federal student loan payments for at least 60 days, but you must contact your servicer and request forbearance. And again, this does not eliminate any existing debt, but it would allow you to not have to pay on your loans for a couple months without any penalties. So those are some helpful measures that might benefit you. Next, they have also extended the federal tax filing deadline. So it has been extended to July 15th for both filing and paying your taxes. So if you know you were going to owe some taxes this year, this can be really helpful for you to be able to put off that payment until July 15th. However, if you do expect to receive a refund, it might be helpful to file right away so that you can have more of that cash back in your own pocket during this time. And lastly, the government has mentioned the possibility of sending out checks or direct deposits directly to us. They have not announced whether this will happen or what the amount will be or who will qualify. But if this does happen and you receive a check in the mail, these are a couple good ideas of what to do with that. Most importantly, you should use that cash for your current needs, especially if you're struggling to provide for those right now, such as your shelter, your utilities, food, transportation, etc. And if you are able to provide for your current needs right now, then a really best practice would be to save that money for future needs and emergencies. Again, we don't know how long this crisis will last, and we're not sure how we might all be impacted, so it'd be great to have that put away in case you do need it. And even if we're not in a time of crisis, it's always a good idea to have an emergency fund prepared for any emergencies like a broken down car or health needs or unemployment. So lastly, these are just a few trustworthy resources for you to check out and read on your own. The first is the CDC's website. They're the main source on everything related to the coronavirus and symptoms and health. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already. Next is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This is an agency of the government that always provides really helpful information on financial matters to consumers like you and me. That's very trustworthy and helpful, and this specific article that's linked is talking about how to protect yourself financially from the impact of the coronavirus, so that may be helpful for you as well. And lastly, the Federal Trade Commission article linked here discusses some of the ways to recognize scams during this time and how to protect yourself from those. So feel free to connect with us at Catholic Charities. We are a HUD certified housing counseling agency providing housing and financial counseling. You can check out our website here to explore all the resources and services we do provide, and you can contact us at the phone number and email listed here. Thanks for listening.